On June 19, 1944, the skies above the Philippine Sea became a graveyard for the Japanese Empire's naval air power. In a single day of catastrophic aerial combat, over 600 Japanese aircraft fell from the sky in what would become known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. This was not just a battle. This was the death of Japan's ability to fight from the air. This was the moment when American naval aviation proved its absolute dominance over the Pacific. And this is the story of how it happened. The year is 1944. The Second World War has been raging for nearly 5 years. In the Pacific, the United States Navy is pushing westward across thousands of miles of ocean, island by island, moving ever closer to the Japanese homeland. The strategy is clear. Capture key islands, establish air bases, cut off Japanese supply lines, and eventually bring the war to Japan's doorstep. By June of 1944, American forces have set their sights on the Mariana Islands. Saipan, Tinian, Guam. These islands are not just strategic outposts. They are within bombing range of Japan itself. If the Americans can take the Marianas, they can launch B-29 Superfortress bombers directly against Japanese cities and industrial centers. For Japan, losing the Marianas would be catastrophic. For America, capturing them would be a giant leap toward victory. But the Japanese are not going to let the Marianas fall without a fight. Admiral Somu Toyota, commander of the Japanese Combined Fleet, knows that if the Marianas are lost, the war is effectively over. He devises a plan. A bold, desperate plan. Operation Ego. The goal is simple but ambitious. Lure the American fleet into a decisive battle. Destroy their carriers, and turn the tide of the war in one massive engagement. The Japanese plan relies heavily on their naval air power. They have spent months rebuilding their carrier forces after devastating losses at the Battle of Midway 2 years earlier. By June 1944, the Japanese have assembled a formidable force. 9 aircraft carriers carrying over 400 planes. Supported by additional land-based aircraft from nearby islands, the Japanese expect to have numerical superiority in the air. They believe they can overwhelm the Americans with sheer numbers. But there is a problem. A critical, fatal problem. The quality of Japanese pilots has declined dramatically. The veteran aviators who fought at Pearl Harbor, who terrorized the Pacific in the early days of the war, are mostly dead. Shot down over Coral Sea. Lost at Midway. Killed in the grinding battles over Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands. The replacements are young, poorly trained, and inexperienced. Many have fewer than 100 hours of flight time. Some have never even landed on a carrier before their first combat mission. In contrast, the American forces have grown exponentially stronger. Admiral Raymond Spruance commands the 5th Fleet. Under him, Vice Admiral Mark Mitcher leads Task Force 58, the Fast Carrier Task Force. This is the most powerful naval aviation force ever assembled. 15 aircraft carriers, 7 battleships, 21 cruisers, 69 destroyers, and nearly 1,000 aircraft. American pilots are well-trained, experienced, and equipped with superior aircraft. The Grumman F6F Hellcat fighter has become the backbone of American naval aviation. Fast, heavily armed, and rugged, the Hellcat is specifically designed to destroy Japanese planes. The stage is set for the largest carrier battle in history. On June 11, 1944, American forces begin their assault on the Marianas. Battleships pound the shores of Saipan with massive naval gunfire. Marines prepare to storm the beaches. And the carriers of Task Force 58 launch strikes against Japanese air bases throughout the region. The invasion has begun. Admiral Toyota receives word of the American attack and immediately orders Operation Ego into motion. The Japanese fleet, led by Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, steams eastward from the Philippines. Their plan is to catch the Americans between their carrier aircraft and land-based planes from Guam and other islands. It is a classic anvil and hammer strategy. The Japanese believe they can achieve a crushing victory. But American intelligence has already detected the Japanese fleet. Submarines shadow Ozawa's ships as they move through the Philippine Sea. Radio intercepts provide additional information. Spruance and Mitcher know the Japanese are coming, and they are ready. On June 18th, the 2 fleets maneuver for position. The Japanese have a significant advantage in aircraft range. Their planes can strike from farther away than American aircraft. Ozawa plans to exploit this advantage by launching attacks from beyond the range of American counterstrikes. He hopes to hit the American carriers while remaining safely out of reach. But Ozawa does not know that he has already lost a critical part of his plan. American carrier aircraft have been systematically destroying Japanese land-based air power throughout the Marianas. Runways are cratered, hangars are burning, dozens of Japanese planes are destroyed on the ground. The anvil half of Ozawa's strategy is being smashed before the battle even begins. June 19, 1944. The day that will become known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The sun rises over the Philippine Sea. Aboard the Japanese carriers, flight crews prepare their aircraft. Pilots receive their briefings. Engines roar to life. And beginning at dawn, the Japanese launch their first wave of attacks. Wave after wave of Japanese aircraft take off from their carriers. Zeros, Judas, Jills, Vals. Over 200 planes in the first strike alone. They form up and head east toward the American fleet. The pilots are nervous. Many have never seen combat, but they have their orders. Find the American carriers and destroy them. But the Americans are waiting. Long before the Japanese planes come within visual range, they are detected. American radar technology has advanced tremendously. Ships equipped with modern radar sets can track incoming aircraft from over 100 miles away. Fighter directors aboard the carriers monitor the radar screens. They calculate the bearing, range, and altitude of the incoming Japanese formations. And they vector dozens of Hellcat fighters into position to intercept. At approximately 10 a.m., the first wave of Japanese aircraft meets the American Combat Air Patrol. The result is slaughter. American pilots, many of them combat veterans with multiple kills, tear into the poorly trained Japanese formations. Hellcats dive from above, guns blazing. Japanese planes explode in midair. Some spin out of control and plummet into the sea. Others break formation and flee. The few Japanese planes that make it through the fighter screen face a wall of anti-aircraft fire from the American ships. The Americans have developed a defensive formation called the circular cruising disposition. Ships are arranged in concentric circles around the carriers. Every vessel is positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. When Japanese planes attempt to attack, they are met with a storm of flak. 5-inch guns, 40mm cannons, 20mm machine guns. The sky fills with exploding shells and tracers. Very few Japanese planes get close enough to drop their bombs or torpedoes, and those that do mostly miss. The first Japanese strike is decimated. Of the more than 200 planes that attacked, fewer than 30 make it back to their carriers. The pilots who return are shaken and confused. They report shooting down many American planes and hitting several carriers. But they are wrong. American losses are minimal. Only a handful of fighters are shot down. Not a single ship is seriously damaged. But Ozawa does not know this. Radio discipline and the chaos of battle mean he is receiving incomplete and inaccurate reports. He believes his pilots are succeeding. He orders more strikes. The second wave launches. Then a third. Then a fourth. Throughout the day, Japanese planes stream toward the American fleet. And throughout the day, they are systematically destroyed. American pilots later described the battle as a turkey shoot. Japanese planes are easy targets. They fly in predictable patterns. Their pilots make basic mistakes. Some Japanese aircraft are so poorly constructed that they catch fire after just a few hits. American pilots rack up multiple kills in a single sortie. Ensign Wilbur Spider Webb shoots down 6 Japanese planes. Lieutenant Alex Vracia destroys 6 in 8 minutes. All across the sky, Japanese aircraft are falling like leaves in autumn. Meanwhile, beneath the waves, another drama is unfolding. American submarines have been tracking the Japanese fleet. On the morning of June 19th, the submarine Albacore spots one of Ozawa's carriers. The Taiho, the newest and largest carrier in the Japanese fleet. Albacore fires a spread of torpedoes. One strikes the Taiho below the waterline. The damage seems minor at first, but gasoline vapor from ruptured fuel tanks begins to fill the ship. Hours later, a massive explosion tears the Taiho apart. The pride of the Japanese carrier fleet sinks, taking over 1,600 men with her. Later that afternoon, the submarine Kavala finds another Japanese carrier. The Shokaku, a veteran of Pearl Harbor, Coral Sea, and many other battles. Kavala fires 4 torpedoes. 3 hit. The Shokaku is crippled. Fires rage out of control. At 3 p.m., a massive explosion rips through the ship. The Shokaku rolls over and sinks. Another 1,200 men are lost. By the end of the day on June 19th, the Japanese have suffered catastrophic losses. Over 350 carrier-based aircraft destroyed. Another 50 land-based planes shot down. 2 fleet carriers sunk. And hundreds of irreplaceable pilots killed. In contrast, American losses are astonishingly light. About 30 aircraft lost. No ships sunk. No ships even seriously damaged. It is one of the most lopsided victories in the history of naval warfare. But Admiral Spruance is cautious. He knows the Japanese fleet is still out there. And he knows his primary mission is to protect the invasion forces at Saipan. Throughout June 19th, he keeps his carriers close to the Marianas. He does not chase the retreating Japanese fleet. Some of his subordinates are frustrated. They believe Spruance should pursue Ozawa and finish the job. But Spruance refuses to be lured away from his responsibility. On June 20th, American search planes finally locate the retreating Japanese fleet. It is late in the afternoon. The Japanese are near the maximum range of American aircraft. Mitchell faces a difficult decision. If he launches a strike now, his planes will have to return after dark. Night carrier landings are extremely dangerous, even for experienced pilots. Many planes will run out of fuel. Many pilots will die. But this may be the only chance to catch the Japanese fleet. Mitchell makes the call. Launch the strike. At 4:30 p.m., over 200 American planes take off. They fly west into the setting sun. Nearly 2 hours later, they find the Japanese fleet. Despite heavy anti-aircraft fire, American pilots press their attacks. They sink the carrier Hayo, damage 2 other carriers, sink 2 oilers, and destroy dozens more Japanese aircraft. But now comes the hard part. The American planes must return to their carriers in the dark. Fuel gauges are dropping toward empty. Pilots strain to see through the darkness. Some planes run out of gas and ditch in the ocean. Others become disoriented and fly off course. As the returning planes approach the task force, Admiral Mitchell makes a bold and compassionate decision. He orders all ships to turn on their lights. Searchlights, deck lights, running lights, everything. It is a huge risk. The lights make the fleet visible to any lurking Japanese submarines. But Mitchell is willing to take that risk to save his pilots. Guided by the lights, planes begin landing. But the conditions are chaotic. Some pilots mistake one carrier for another. Planes crash on landing. Others run out of fuel and crash into the sea nearby. Destroyers race through the darkness, searching for downed airmen. By the time the recovery is over, 80 American planes have been lost. But miraculously, most of the pilots and aircrew are rescued from the water. Only 49 men are killed or missing. The Battle of the Philippine Sea is over. The Japanese have lost 3 fleet carriers, over 600 aircraft, and approximately 400 to 500 pilots. Their naval air power is shattered beyond repair. Japan will never again be able to mount a major carrier operation. The once feared Japanese naval aviation force has been destroyed in 2 days of combat. For the Americans, the victory is overwhelming. They have achieved complete air superiority over the Pacific. The invasion of the Marianas will continue. Saipan, Tinian, and Guam will fall to American forces. And from airfields built on those islands, B-29 bombers will begin the strategic bombing campaign against Japan. But let us step back and ask the question, how did this happen? How did the Japanese lose so catastrophically? The answer lies in multiple factors. Training, technology, strategy, and intelligence all played critical roles. First, training. By 1944, the quality of Japanese pilots had declined dramatically. Japan's early war successes had been built on the backs of superbly trained naval aviators. These men had spent years honing their skills. But as the war dragged on, Japan could not replace its losses quickly enough. The training program was shortened. Standards were lowered. New pilots were rushed into combat with minimal preparation. At the Battle of the Philippine Sea, many Japanese pilots had fewer than 6 months of training. Some had never even practiced carrier landings before their first combat mission. This lack of experience made them easy prey for veteran American pilots. In contrast, American pilot training had become a well-oiled machine. The United States had established extensive training programs that produced thousands of skilled aviators every year. American pilots received comprehensive instruction. They trained on the same aircraft they would fly in combat. They practiced tactics. They learned from the experiences of veterans. By the time they reached the fleet, American pilots were ready for the challenges they would face. Second, technology. The Grumman F6F Hellcat was a game changer. Introduced in 1943, the Hellcat was designed specifically to counter the Japanese Zero. It was faster, more durable, and more heavily armed than its predecessor, the F4F Wildcat. The Hellcat could absorb tremendous punishment and keep flying. Its 6.50 caliber machine guns could shred Japanese aircraft, which were lightly built and lacked armor protection. By June 1944, the Hellcat equipped nearly all American carrier fighter squadrons. American radar technology also provided a decisive advantage. Shipboard radar could detect incoming aircraft from 100 miles away. This early warning gave American fighters time to climb to altitude and position themselves for intercepts. The Japanese had no equivalent technology. Their planes often flew into American defenses with no idea that they had been detected. Third, strategy. The Japanese plan for Operation Ego had several fatal flaws. The reliance on land-based air power from Guam and other islands was undermined when American carrier strikes destroyed those bases before the battle began. The assumption that Japanese aircraft could attack from beyond American range was based on outdated intelligence. And the decision to launch massive, poorly coordinated strikes played directly into American strengths. The American defensive strategy was sound. The circular cruising disposition maximized anti-aircraft firepower. The use of radar-directed fighter interceptions allowed American pilots to hit Japanese formations before they reached the fleet. And the discipline to stay close to the invasion beaches, rather than chasing the Japanese fleet prematurely, ensured that the primary mission was accomplished. Fourth, intelligence. American codebreakers had been reading Japanese naval communications for years. By 1944, the intelligence advantage was overwhelming. The Americans knew the Japanese were planning a major operation. They knew approximately when and where it would occur. They tracked the Japanese fleet as it moved into position. This intelligence allowed Spruance and Mitcher to prepare their defenses and position their forces optimally. The Japanese, meanwhile, were operating largely in the dark. They had poor intelligence on American strength and dispositions. They did not know that their codes had been broken, and they received wildly inaccurate reports from their own pilots about the results of their attacks. Ozawa believed his strikes were succeeding, when in fact they were being annihilated. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot was not just a tactical victory. It was a strategic turning point. The destruction of Japanese naval air power meant that Japan could no longer effectively defend its remaining island possessions. The Philippines would fall, Iwo Jima would fall, Okinawa would fall, and ultimately, Japan itself would be brought to its knees. The human cost of the battle was significant. Hundreds of young Japanese pilots, many of them barely out of training, died in the skies over the Philippine Sea. They were brave men sent into a battle they had no realistic chance of winning. Their sacrifice was immense, but it could not change the outcome of the war. For the Americans, the battle was a triumph. But it came with its own costs. The pilots who flew the dangerous night mission on June 20th showed extraordinary courage. Many risked their lives to attack the Japanese fleet, knowing they might not make it back. The decision to light up the fleet to guide them home was an act of compassion that saved many lives. The Battle of the Philippine Sea also highlighted the importance of leadership. Admiral Spruance's cautious approach was criticized by some, but it ensured that the primary mission was accomplished. Admiral Mitcher's decision to launch the late afternoon strike and then light up the fleet showed boldness tempered with humanity. These leaders understood not just tactics and strategy, but also the value of the men under their command. In the years following the war, historians and military analysts have studied the Battle of the Philippine Sea extensively. It is often cited as a textbook example of how air superiority can be achieved and maintained. The lessons learned from the battle influenced naval aviation doctrine for decades. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot also became part of American popular culture. The nickname itself reflects the one-sided nature of the engagement. A turkey shoot is a term for an easy hunt where the targets are plentiful and present little challenge. It was a fitting description for what American pilots experienced on June 19, 1944. For Japan, the battle marked the end of any realistic hope of victory in the Pacific War. The loss of so many aircraft and pilots meant that Japan's carriers were effectively floating airfields with no planes to launch. In the desperate final year of the war, Japan would resort to kamikaze tactics, using poorly trained pilots to fly suicide missions against American ships. It was a sign of how completely Japanese naval air power had been destroyed. The capture of the Mariana Islands proceeded as planned. Saipan fell in July 1944 after fierce fighting. The battle for Saipan was one of the bloodiest of the Pacific War, with thousands of American and Japanese casualties. Tinian was captured in early August. Guam, which had been an American possession before the war, was liberated in the same month. From the airfields built on these islands, B-29 Superfortress bombers began their campaign against Japan. These massive four-engine bombers could carry tons of bombs over thousands of miles. They struck Japanese cities, factories, and military installations. The bombing campaign would eventually culminate in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The Battle of the Philippine Sea demonstrated the power of carrier-based naval aviation. It showed that a well-trained, well-equipped force could achieve total air superiority, even against numerically comparable opponents. It proved the value of technological advantages like radar and superior aircraft. And it highlighted the importance of intelligence and strategic planning. Today, the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot is remembered as one of the decisive battles of World War II. It is studied in military academies around the world. Veterans of the battle, both American and Japanese, have shared their stories, providing invaluable insights into what it was like to fight in one of history's greatest aerial engagements. The wrecks of the Japanese carriers Taiho, Shokaku, and Hayo rest on the floor of the Philippine Sea, along with hundreds of aircraft and the remains of the men who flew them. They are silent monuments to a battle that changed the course of the war. The men who fought in the Battle of the Philippine Sea were part of the greatest generation. They faced enormous challenges and made tremendous sacrifices. The American pilots who flew into combat that day were defending not just their ships and their comrades, but the principles of freedom and democracy. The Japanese pilots, though fighting for a cause that history has judged harshly, showed bravery and devotion to duty. In remembering the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, we honor all who served. We remember the strategic brilliance of commanders like Spruance and Mitcher. We celebrate the skill and courage of American pilots like Alex Vreeshuh and Wilbur Webb. And we acknowledge the sacrifice of Japanese pilots who flew into overwhelming odds. The Battle of the Philippine Sea was a turning point in the Pacific War. It demonstrated American industrial might, technological superiority, and tactical excellence. It shattered Japanese hopes of reversing their fortunes. And it paved the way for the final year of the war, which would bring liberation to millions and ultimately end with Japan's surrender. On June 19, 1944, over 600 Japanese planes fell from the sky above the Philippine Sea. It was the single most devastating day for Japanese naval aviation in the entire war. It was the day that air superiority in the Pacific was decisively and permanently won. And it was the day that became known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. A day that will live forever in the annals of naval and military history. A day when skill, preparation, and courage won a victory that echoed across the Pacific and helped bring the Second World War to its eventual conclusion.